Hell, you've decided to give Final Fantasy XIV a try. In fact, you may even be downloading it as we speak. And so while you wait to actually start the game, you've decided to look for any tips or useful information that might help you on your new journey. So here are a few things that you may find useful. First step when starting most MMOs is choosing a server and creating your character, and this can often be the first moment of anxiety for new players, as there tends to be this fear that your choices may come back to bite you, whether it be picking the wrong data center/server or making suboptimal choices in character creation. Thankfully, these are a non-issue in 14, as thanks to things like data center/server travel, you can at any moment visit and play on any other server in your region. So if you make a character in North America, you'll have access to all the servers in NA, though some things are only available when on your home server, such as the banking system or free companies, which are Final Fantasy XIV's clans or guilds. But with all that being said, there are still some things you may want to consider when choosing a server, that being the preferred/new status, as these are servers that you'll actually receive bonuses for creating your character on, and these bonuses come in the form of a double experience buff that will persist until a few months after the server loses its status, a handful of feathers that can be used to buy leveling gear, and lastly 15 days of free game time if you're not on the free trial. And new servers actually have an extra bonus in the form of a free 1 million gil, again if you're not on the free trial. Though I do feel I should recommend against creating characters on new servers, as generally the data center itself is new and thus the community is incredibly small, meaning you'll have to spend most of your time on other centers for various things. Now, since I suspect most people watching this will be playing on NA, I feel I should note that if you don't care about the status bonus, then the easy go-to option is going to be any server on Aether, as it's kind of the unofficial hub of North America. Moving on to character creation, much like your data center/server, your choices aren't going to affect much of anything. Yes, the different races and clans do have different starting stats, but they really do not matter. You might get an extra 1 HP at endgame because of your race, which, considering you can easily get over 100k, that's less than nothing. Which is to say, make your character how you want to make them. Pick the race that you want to pick, because generally you're not going to be punished for any of the choices you make during character creation. Even the job you choose doesn't actually affect all that much, as you're able to play every job on a single character. In fact, you can gain access to any of the other jobs available at character creation before you even complete the starting questline. Speaking of which, your starting questline is actually the only thing that your choices will affect. But even this doesn't matter all that much, as the three do eventually converge into the same story. So just pick the job you want to pick, and if you don't end up liking it, you can always switch to another. That being said, if you want help picking your first job, then check out the video linked in the corner. Now that you've actually made it into the game, the first thing I will always recommend is opening your character configurations and changing your movement settings, because by default the game will have you set to standard, which is rather awkward and kind of limiting. Instead, change it to legacy and you'll immediately see a difference. You may also want to disable camera pivot so your camera remains static. This can also be achieved by rebinding your move left and right to strafe left and right, and doing this will also allow you to do a slow backpedal if that's something that you want. There are actually a plethora of useful settings in the character configurations, many of which I recommend changing or enabling. But for now, I'll just focus on the movement settings, and when you do want to mess around with the other options, you can check out another video I did going over just that. The first thing the game is going to have you do is follow the MSQ, or the main story questline, which is indicated by this meteor-shaped quest marker. And this throughout the entire game is going to be your main focus, hence the name, as not only is it the actual story, but also most features found in the game are locked behind your story progress. Things like mounts or the ability to upgrade your classes to a job won't become available until you reach a certain point in the narrative, so you always want to try to progress the story. Now, the MSQ isn't the only type of quest you'll come across. In fact, there are two other options you'll often encounter. The first and more interesting of the two are known as feature quests. These are blue quest markers with a plus, and as the name implies, they generally unlock features. So things like new dungeons using mounts, player housing, PvP, and many other features must first be unlocked by completing a corresponding quest. It's for this reason you almost always want to make an effort to grab these quests when you see them, even if you don't necessarily plan on doing them at that moment. Also, there are a subset of these quests known as job quests, which, as the name implies, revolves around your job, and these you actually want to prioritize over the MSQ, because not only do they give you new gear for your job, but also many of your abilities are actually locked behind these quests. And if you want to upgrade your class to its corresponding job, you'll first have to reach that point in the job questline. Thankfully, the game does let you you know when new quests are available, as it will appear below the MSQ banner. The last of our quest markers is the generic yellow side quest marker, and the thing is, you never really have to do these. The MSQ is designed so you'll almost always have enough experience to access the next quest, and thus by the time you finish the MSQ, whatever job you take through it will be at max level. And even when it comes to leveling other jobs, there are various better ways to get experience even at the lower levels, a couple of which we'll touch upon a little later. As a result, it's usually not worth doing any of the normal side quests outside of completion's sake, as the rewards also don't tend to be that great either. That being said, I should note that there are some exceptions, but in those cases it's easier to look up the quests that do actually have notable rewards rather than just doing them all. Moving on from the different types of quests, let's talk about Aetherytes. One of the first things the game is going to have you do is attune to your starting city's Aetherite. And what this does is not only let you return to the city from anywhere using the return spell, but it also unlocks the ability to teleport to that location, which you'll learn upon attuning to another Aetherite. This is going to be one of the main ways you travel across the world, which is why you want to make an effort to attune to every Aetherite you come across, as there will usually be one or more in every area you go to. However, keep in mind these teleports do cost gil, and the longer the distance, the more it will usually cost. This price, however, can be mitigated by favoring an Aetherite, which will cut the teleport price in half. That being said, you can only favorite 3 Aetherites by default, and usually you'll want to do this on the 3 main city Aetherites. But it doesn't end there, as going back to the city, you'll notice that there are various smaller Aetherites spread around, and much like the larger ones, you'll want to make sure to attune to every one of these anytime you make it to a new city, as by doing so, you'll gain the ability to teleport between them, thus allowing you to traverse the cities much faster than you would be able to normally. Also, by attuning to all of them, you'll unlock bonus teleports that allow you to go to any of the city's exits. Now, early on, after level 10, if you want to save your gil, you can use the Chocobo Porters to travel for much cheaper, but at the cost of having to wait the trip out. Also, like Aetherytes, you have to interact with the location's porter to travel to said location in the future, so keep that in mind. With quests and travel covered, let's move on to some more generic tips, starting with one of the best sources of experience at the early levels, the hunting log, which is unlocked by completing your first job quest. Put simply, the hunting log is a list of monsters that when killed will reward the corresponding job a sizable amount of experience. It's for this reason that you want to make an effort to seek out these monsters and complete the log. At the very least, the first 2 pages, which help most jobs get to the levels where they can start taking advantage of other leveling methods such as dungeons and roulettes. Furthermore, the first 2 pages generally are restricted to the area where the jobs start. So for Ul'dah, the jobs will be limited to Thanalan, Gridania the Shroud, and Limsa La Noscia, though page 3 and beyond will generally be spread throughout all of A Realm Reborn. Lastly, if you see an enemy with this symbol over their head, that means they are part of the log, which means you don't have to constantly check and see if an enemy is in there. After the hunting log, we have the challenge log, which becomes available through a future quest in Limsa after completing the starting questline, which should be around level 15. Unlike the hunting log, which will mostly help you early on, the challenge log will remain useful throughout your journey, rewarding various things each week like experience and gil for completing different challenges. And again, unlike the hunting log, which is static in its experience rewards, the hunting log is percentage based, meaning if you complete a challenge with a low level job, you may get 2,000 experience, but if you were to complete the same challenge with a high level job, you may get 200k experience. Also, unlike the hunting log, you usually don't have to seek out the challenges, as they tend to be things you'll do throughout the week anyways, with a couple of notable exceptions. And, as the previous statement implies, the challenge log resets each week, meaning that you're able to constantly take advantage of it. Again, unlike the hunting log, which is a one and done thing for most jobs. Speaking of which, let's talk about getting new jobs. After you do the level 10 job quest for your starting job, you'll gain the ability to pick up other jobs. And that doesn't just mean the battle ones, as you can also start picking up the different crafters and gatherers. Also, it's generally a good idea to go ahead and pick up the various jobs when you can, because it's just nice to have them in case you want to try something different. Thankfully, the process is incredibly simple, as acquiring a new job just requires you talking to the corresponding guild NPC only a couple times, which of course you'll be able to identify by the feature quest marker they'll inevitably have. Also, quickly want to go over the armory bonus. You see, every job you get is going to have a passive experience bonus as long as it's a lower level than your highest level job, which is why it's actually a good idea to focus on one job, because if you get it to max level, then all your other jobs are going to have a massive experience bonus until they reach max as well. Now, while we're on the topic of collecting jobs, let's talk about gear and gear sets. First, gear. Anytime you get a new piece of gear, a simple way to tell if it's better than what you currently have is simply by hitting this button, as it will automatically equip whatever the game believes is the best piece of gear at that moment, and usually it'll be right. Also, if you want to switch jobs, you do so by changing your weapon, as the second you equip a job's weapon, you will switch to that job. Furthermore, if you click on this little list icon, you'll open up your gear list, which allow you to save a set of equipment. That you can easily swap to by simply clicking it. And the most notable use of this is saving your different job sets, as it will allow you to easily switch between them. You can even put these sets on your hotbar so you don't have to open the page to swap jobs. Now, before we end off this video, I want to go over just a few more minor things. While traveling through the overworld, you're going to occasionally come across these special events known as fates. These are basically small timed quests that anyone can take part of and help complete. Then, depending on your contribution to its completion, you'll be rewarded gil and experience. These are yet another reason why normal side quests are somewhat irrelevant, as fates tend to be a bit faster, and they even have a challenge log entry. At level 10, you'll gain the ability to unlock leaves, which are repeatable quests that you'll use a special currency to do. Much like normal side quests, you generally don't need to do these for your battle jobs. That being said, they are not limited to your battle jobs, as you can also undertake crafting and gathering leaves, which are actually a decent way to level said jobs early on. Around the time that you unlock leaves, you'll also gain access to your first bit of group content, guild hests, which are basically small tutorials that you can queue for. However, most people do tend to skip these, as there is a more direct tutorial that actually offers some pretty powerful rewards. Speaking of which, the MSQ will eventually bring you to an area called the Hall of Novices, which will unlock a series of tutorials that you'll want to make sure to do, as not only will they grant you an armor set that will last you for some time, but a ring that will provide a rather sizable experience boost while you're under level 30. Also, these tutorials are not a one-time thing, as you can do them with any role to acquire a corresponding armor set, so keep that in mind when you decide to level other jobs. Now, because I don't want to keep throwing information at you that won't be relevant for some time, we're going to end this video off here, but this will be the first in a series of videos offering advice and tips for new players, with the next video going over dungeons and roles. And if it's already been released, you'll see it at the side relatively soon. But anyways, if you found this video helpful, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Also consider checking out one of my other guides, such as the 2 listed in cards earlier, or whatever video is currently on the screen. With that being said, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again.